Stay tuned. Ahead I'll talk with Mina Fears about her debut young adult novel, The Scorpion Queen. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. This novel is set in the year 1359 and deals with themes of love and friendship. And because it's set so far back in time, it required a lot of research on the part of the author. We'll learn more about that and the story ahead. Mina, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Thanks, Dan, for having me.
Well, this is your debut novel, so has this story been kind of brewing for a while for you?
Definitely. I honestly first got the initial seeds of this story back in 2019 when I was in grad school. I was finishing my MFA and I took a seminar on fairy tales and literature. And I just knew that I wanted to attempt a fairy tale retelling. And I came across this story from Mali that was pretty gruesome. It was like a fairy tale about a wicked king who boils his daughter's suitors alive in a big pot. And I thought, this is just so dark and so creepy. It reminded me of those, European Brothers Grimm stories, but it was still very African. And I wanted to write my own spin on it.
So tell us about the story here.
Right. So the story follows Aminata, Amie for short. She is the daughter of a family of prosperous salt merchants. And unfortunately, she is framed for a crime she didn't commit. So she ends up really being disowned by her family and falling into this disgrace. And in order to redeem herself, she has to work in the palace of Emperor Suleiman, who was the real-life emperor of Mali in the 1350s. So she ends up having to work full-time, unpaid, as a handmaiden for Emperor Suleiman's daughter, Princess Mariama. And the Princess Mariama, she is going through her own really intense problems. Her father, Emperor Suleiman, has set up these impossible trials for anyone who wants to marry his daughter. And when the suitors fail, which they always fail, he boils them alive in a huge pot at the center of Timbuktu's market square. So Aminata, as handmaiden to Princess Mariama, teams up with the princess to end these cruel trials and overthrow the really awful systems that are keeping them in place.
So it sounds like there are a number of themes that you explore in this novel. Among them, this friendship between these two women that starts out roughly, but they eventually figure out that they have some things in common and they can help each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Writing that relationship was honestly my favorite part of writing The Scorpion Queen, because I'm really interested in friendships that are, impacted by power dynamics and differences of inherited wealth and status. Princess Mariama is the daughter of, the emperor of Mali, and Aminata, Amie, her handmaiden, is of a much lower status. She's a lot more vulnerable, and yet these girls find commonalities and they learn to love and support each other. It was just a really fun friendship to write, and I hope that comes through when readers enjoy the story.
Well, Aminata has a love interest, and she has to make some tough choices regarding him.
She absolutely does. Yeah. She, when the story starts, she is, very much in love with her childhood sweetheart. He was her intended. They were supposed to get married. But because she's framed for this crime that she didn't commit, she is no longer eligible to marry her love interest, Kader. So because Amie and Kader can no longer officially be together in a way that's sanctioned by their families and their communities, they have to instead form this plan to run away together, which is really romantic. It's one of my favorite, young adult romance tropes. Boy and girl fall in love as kids and they run away together. But then that plan is complicated by another plan that arises around Amie helping Princess Mariama end her father's deadly trials. So Amie really does have to make a tough choice between the boy she loves and helping this girl that she's becoming very close friends with.
Well, this story is told in first person through Amie's eyes. I'm wondering about that choice, because you could have told it a different way, but you told it in a very personal first-person way.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been drawn to first person narratives. And I think that especially when you're writing these young adult characters, Ami is only 16. Um, it's hard. I think first person really fits young adult characters because when you're so young, you're still trying to figure out the world. You kind of are trapped in your own experience. And there's a lot, there's people who with more age, more power, more life experience who can have this kind of bird's eye view, this kind of third person omniscient view that a 16-year-old just wouldn't have. So I think that because Ami is very much in her own head, it made sense to write it in first person. And also because I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but some of the other characters really end up tricking Ami in a pretty awful way. They play some pretty bad tricks on her. And I want the audience to discover that they're being tricked along with Ami. I don't want the audience to be able to see it coming. And I feel that if I wrote it in third person, the audience might be able to see some of those twists and turns and dirty tricks.
I'm curious about the audience for this book. It's a young adult book to begin with, but because the character is female, do you see it appealing more to female readers or to everyone?
I am aware that because it's called The Scorpion Queen and it has a majority, female cast of characters, I do think it probably will appeal a bit more to women readers. That said, I think that this book is for everybody. I think it's for everybody who's interested in history, frankly. A big part of creating this project was working closely with historians, some at my alma mater, Columbia, and then some historians who I actually just kind of cold emailed. And they told me everything that they knew, like kind of for free. They were very friendly historians. And they really went above and beyond to help me create the world of medieval West Africa and to recreate that world based on oral and written sources. So I really do think that my audience, yes, I think that this story will resonate with young women, especially young Black women, but I don't think that my audience needs to be limited to just that group. I think anyone who's interested in medieval history would really get a lot out of The Scorpion Queen.
I'm talking with Mina Fears about her young adult novel, The Scorpion Queen, and our conversation continues in a moment. If you're enjoying this discussion, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. And thank you. Well, since you brought it up, research was one of my questions because this is set in 1359, so obviously a lot of research was involved in the book, but I'm curious, as you were doing that research, what surprised you the most about that time period?
Oh, that's a great question. I just was really surprised by the fact that a lot of things that I take for granted, like being able to salt my food, no problem. Salt was really hard to come by in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's why salt became actually just as valuable as gold in some parts of West Africa, because it was so expensive to get it. You had to go up into the Sahara Desert with a team of people, and you'd have to go to a certain salt mining center in Tagaza, or I can't pronounce some of the names of these salt mining centers, but they would be in the Sahara, a little bit north of Timbuktu. And it would be an incredibly labor intensive process to get this salt. And that's just one of the many things that the Timbuktu trade routes really exported to the rest of Africa. Salt was one, also goods from North Africa and Southern Europe, things like cloth and like dresses and bronze work, all sorts of things were being traded back and forth. So I guess I'd also say I was surprised by the interconnectivity of the time. Even though my story is set in the 1350s, it was the community that Aminata would have lived in the city she would have lived in, Timbuktu, would be incredibly diverse, full of people from a lot of different West African ethnic groups, Hausa, Fulani, Malinke, but also there would be Berbers from North Africa, Egyptians, even Europeans from Spain. and parts of Eastern Europe were also in the area. So it was a lot more diverse and cosmopolitan than we might assume.
Well, this novel, The Scorpion Queen, is classified as a young adult novel. What is it that appealed to you about writing for this age group?
Something that I really love about writing for young adults is that they change so quickly. And I think that that's important because when you're writing fiction, the conventional wisdom is to write a character who changes in some way by the end of the story. And I feel that when you're writing stories about adults don't always change. Like a lot of us are very like set in our ways. So it was really, I like writing young characters because I feel like, yes, Amie changes a lot from the beginning of the Scorpion Queen to the end. But it makes sense that she's changing so much because she's so very young. She's only 16.
One of the things I've discovered talking to authors of young adult novels is frequently they have older readers as well. You know, for one, a good story is a good story, but I think also sometimes people remember being young or they just find talking about kids and learning about young adults and their experiences a very engaging experience.
Yeah, I definitely imagine that my readership is going to include a lot of readers like that. And I am one of those readers. I still read young adult fiction as a grown adult. And I really do agree with that standpoint that a good story is a good story. And I think because we can all relate to being a teenager once upon a time, we never really quite lose that part of ourselves. So I'm certainly very connected to my 16-year-old self. And I think a lot of my readers probably are as well.
There's a question that I like to ask authors of fiction, and it's this. If you could spend a day in real life with one of the characters from your novel, who would it be and why?
That's a great question. You know, I would really want to have a sit down with Emperor Suleiman. And I think that's kind of like a bit cheating because not only is he a fictional, I've created a fictionalized Emperor Suleiman, but the real Emperor Suleiman was very much documented by like court visits. Ibn Battuta, a North African explorer, went to Emperor Suleiman's court in like 1353, I want to say. And he has very detailed descriptions of how Emperor Suleiman was very friendly, but he didn't serve very good food. And he was kind of miserly. So I would really love to have a sit down with this historical emperor and kind of figure out, you know, was he as bad as people said that he was? And as I've kind of made him even worse. And, you know, did he deserve that treatment? Because in real life, he was not actually boiling his daughter's suitors. That's, I fictionalized him and made him a bit more villainous than he probably was.
A little earlier, we were talking about some of the themes that this novel explores, you know, love and friendship. So I'm curious that besides just being a really engaging read, is there a takeaway for readers here, things you want them to continue to think about after they've completed this story?
Yeah, I definitely want my readers to continue to think about power dynamics in friendships and romantic relationships. And I think that Amie's relationships with Princess Mariama and with her love interest Kader both, you know, really exploit the fact that Aminata's loss in status has made it easier for certain people to take advantage of her. And I just think that that's a really unfortunate fact of life. And I want readers, you know, to think about their own relationships and, you know, kind of be honest about the power dynamics that might be happening within them.
This young adult novel is The Scorpion Queen by Mina Fears. Mina, thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you so much, Dan. I had a great conversation.
If you'd like to purchase The Scorpion Queen, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.